time for another video here. In our last videos, we've been dealing with if, else, else if statements, as well as the shorthand form of it, which is known as the uh, ternary operator. Still trying to pronounce that word right. And I have pretty much stated that if one condition is true or false, it's going to print something. If it's going to print this, or last resort is going to print this. We haven't yet dealt with the option of two conditions being true, and maybe that's where this comes in play. I don't know, but let's adjust the screen and get started on our next section. So let me downsize this, transfer it over, and get started on the next area of study for this. So C++ nested if. What does nested mean? And if you've studied any other code language and stuff, nested means that something is nested inside of something else, or something is placed inside of something else. For C++, a nested if, you can also place an if statement inside another if. This is called nested if statement. A nested if lets you check for a condition only if another condition is already true. That whole example I was trying to use before, if you have a driver's license or if you have a car, sort of thing. So we have a syntax here. Again, I don't know if you can see the screen or not, but we're going to go ahead and type it in here because I need the exercise to keep learning this stuff and getting used to writing this stuff out and seeing it. So first the comment, if condition 1 in space that enter, and then we have code to run if condition 1 is true, and then we have another if, but let's tab this forward a little farther. There we go. If secondary if. So as you notice, we don't have the else right here. We just have another if. So condition 1 is true, we print this up. And then we're going to go to the next line after that. Condition 2, and then we're going to have another one of these right here. Enter, comment, tab, code to run if both condition 1 and condition 2 are true. Enter. And then we're going to place our curly brackets in the right spot. So that one right there is going to end the second condition, which is nested inside the first condition. And this one right here is going to end the first condition we started with. And that's kind of how that's written out. So as you can see right here, if condition 1 is true, it's going to print this. Then it's going to go to the next line and check condition 2. If condition 2 is also true, it's going to print this. If it's not true, then it's going to skip that line of code and go to the next line of code. If this one is false, it's going to skip this one right here, but will it also go to this one? Well, let's find out. Our first example. In this example, we check if x is greater than 10. If it is, then we check if y is greater than 20. Okay, so now we're going to do an example so we can get rid of all this code right here. And start putting our example in. Integer x is 15. In statement, integer y is, by the way, while I am kind of writing this out, trying to do two things at one time. In our last video and stuff, I don't know if I learned something or if I refreshed my mind on something. But the ternary operator is something that I did not remember very well. I've seen it, but I didn't remember it, so wasn't sure how it worked. But going through this a second time and stuff refreshed my mind on it, so now I morely understand it when I see that kind of code. Okay, that. So we got our first if statement. We got our first check on a condition. We're going to output if this is true. X is greater than 10 with a new line afterwards. And in that, because if this is right, we're going to have one instead of another. So enter. Then we kind of got a comment right here. We put a space in there just like they have and put the comment to where this is the nested if. If y is greater than 20. Okay, and then we're going to print this if this is true as well. Standard. We don't, in this case, have an alternative resort to go to if these are false, but in this case, using this example, this will not be false. Greater than 20, new line, and in that. And then we got our return there at the end. Okay, so y, okay, yep, right here, I'm missing something. There we go. Okay, and then we just saved it. So in this case, we're checking the first one. Is x greater than 10? X is 15, so x is going to be greater than 10, so this is going to be true, obviously, and it's going to print this line right here. Then it's going to move down to the next line. It's going to ignore the comment and come down to this next if. Is y greater than 20? Well, y is 25, so this is also going to be true, so we should get both. And we got new lines for these right here. So x is greater than 10. That should print. And since this one is true as well, y is greater than 20, this should also print 2. So this is the two conditions. The whole analogy on driver's license and car sort of situation. Do we have a driver's license? True. So we can operate a car. Do we have a car? True. So we can drive in our car. Sort of thing. So now we got it saved. We'll go and run this, and both of these should print out. And there they are. X is greater than 10 because that first condition is true. Y is greater than 20 because that second condition is true. It even shows what the results should be. Again, if your code does not come out properly because of something you did, you can always check their code right there, go to theirs, and as long as you type the code in exactly the way they have it, it should work and print out the result right here. But mine worked as well and stuff. The only difference is I'm not using the whole namespace up here at the top. I'm going ahead and putting in the standard semicolon, semicolon, and then C out. Same thing with right here. So now we're going to move into a real life example. So how would this kind of code work in real life? Nested if statements are useful when you need to test multiple conditions that depend on each other. For example, checking if a person is old enough to vote and if they are a citizen. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of all this code right here because for this example that we're going to get ready to type out, it's not going to match what we have here. So integer age is 20. Boolean or bool type is citizen is true. Okay, so we're stating our age is 20 and that we are a U.S. citizen or a citizen, whether it's a U.S. citizen or not. It could be any country, sorry. Enters to separate the statements with variables and types with the if conditions. So if age is 20 is 20 or greater, so equal to or greater than or equal to, yeah, greater than or equal to sounds better. 18, and put the brackets in. Standard, the output for that is going to be old enough to vote. And then we're going to also have a new line, because if it does become true, then we need to be able to separate this output from the next output. So come down. We're not going to actually enter, because we don't want to go past this. We want to actually add to this curly bracket right here. Else no, sorry. I forgot we're doing nested ones, so and I'm kind of skipping down through this. Let's go back up to here, go to that. We actually do want to hit enter, but we're going to put an additional space in there to show the nested if. If, and here's our second condition, is citizen, which is already stated as true. There's no evaluation there. So we know that this one's true. Curly brackets again. We will end up outputting this for a true statement. And you are a citizen, so you can vote, period. Sorry, they got an exclamation mark there. New line, end statement. Now we're going to just simply move down. For the else, because we have to have an alternate resort for if something is false. In this case, it won't be, but so this statement right here won't be printed, or this line of code won't be run. Standard, but it's in there because you need to get used to put something else in as a last resort. But you must be a citizen to vote, period. New line. End statement. Come down. Down again. No. Make sure I get this right. Yeah, right there. So this is where we are now. So here is something you're seeing me do right here. I am getting one if statement confused with the other if statement. Since we have two if statements, one nested inside the other, I'm getting one confused with the other. It happens a lot. Your code can get messed up because of this. You're going to see yourself doing this unless you're really good with this and stuff. And some people are. Some people can see the difference between one statement right here and the other statement, which is right here, and then continues down here. So this else is going to have an alternate option for if it's false. Standard output not old enough to vote, period, new line, end statement. Okay, so we got the example written in there. We're going to go ahead and make this bigger. Come on, there we go. Okay, so like I said, it's not that difficult, and that's why I'm putting a lot of space in between these to get these curly brackets confused with each other, which for VS Code, which is what I'm using, they are color coding the curly brackets, stating that for this if statement right here in conditions, all these parentheses and curly brackets are blue. In Notepad or the built-in editor that you may have for your system, you're not going to see that most likely. It's not going to color code these right here. So you're going to have to keep track of where they are and make sure that you're tabbed forward and whatnot. But VS Code changes the color of the curly brackets when you're nesting. So for this inside one, it's all blue. For the outside one, it's all purple. That kind of helps us keep track of it. Now to run through the code. Okay, so again, age is 20. So that's the only one we got to evaluate. The other one, this is true. There's no evaluation there. So for this one right here, it's an evaluation. First, we got to determine if age is equal to, or greater than 18. In this case, it is. So this is going to be true, so it's going to run this right here. If it was under, then this would be false, and it would skip this line and come to this line next, I assume. We can play with that to find out here in a little bit. Since we already know this is true, the only way to adjust this would be to change this true statement to false to make it skip this first line. But since it's true, it's going to run this first line. So the output right here, when we run this code, is going to be old enough to vote, and you are a citizen, so you can vote. Since we have this saved now, I just saved it. I'm going to run the code, and that's what we should see, the first two, one, old enough to vote, and you are a citizen. Scrap that terminal. Now let's change this right here. Nope. Change this to where it's less than 18. So we'll put 17 in there. Okay. Let's see if it, we know it's going to skip this, but is it going to skip the if statement? So we're going to run the code. Not old enough to vote. Okay, so where is that at? That is down here. So yes, it skips this right here and doesn't even check the second if statement. So if the first one is false, since you're trying to find out if you can vote or not, in this case, or in this example, since the first one is false, there's no point in even checking the second one because you're not able to vote since the first one is false. So automatically it jumps down to the last resort and stuff since none of this is going to work. So not old enough to vote, so it just prints out this last one. Let's change this back to 20. Clear the terminal, save it, and the only way to change this one here is to change this from true to false. So that's what we're going to do. So now this is going to be false. So when we run the code, we're going to get old enough to vote, but you must be a citizen to vote. So therefore, yes, you're old enough to vote, but apparently you're not a citizen. So it's going to print this one right here. This statement right here. That's the example. And again, this is just an example. This has nothing to do with anything else. So yeah, when this one's true, it's going to run this. When this is false, it's going to skip all this and go down to this one right here. Let's clear the terminal right here so it's out of the way. If this one's true, it's going to check this condition. If this one's true, it's going to run this. If it's false, it's going to run this one right here. And then it's going to skip this because we've already printed up something for this. So when this gets printed up, it's going to skip this one down here because this is part of the first if statement, but it will check the second condition. That's why I kind of like the idea of using old enough to drive and do you have a vehicle situation. But now we've done all that. We've played with that code right there. We've determined how to manipulate the code to get different results. Let's move on. Notes. You can nest as many if statements as you want, but avoid making the code too deep. It can become hard to read. As you've seen and stuff, I wanted to try to, at first, try to put the else statement right here, not realizing that it already had an else statement, and this was still part of the nested if, where my else statement should have gone down here. You may have noticed that, you may not have noticed that, but yes, when you get multiple if statements in there, it may be kind of hard to tell if you don't have color-coded brackets to go with each statement like VS Code is using right here. I'm sure if I added in another if statement, it would change the color again from purple to blue to whatever. I don't know what the next color would be. But having the colored brackets really helps with this right here. It's still going to be kind of difficult for somebody else and stuff because if they are operating, so I am using VS Code. If I save this and send this to somebody else to add to this code, and if they are not using VS Code or something that color codes these brackets, this may be kind of difficult for them to read. So adding some comments in here might help. Something like first if statement enter first nested if statement, since it's nested. and then following that and stuff, and then coming down here, putting end of nested statement. That might help. And then obviously these brackets right here indicate that. That may help a little bit. That way the person that's, if you are working on a team and stuff and the other person doesn't have VS Code, or they don't have color coded curly brackets and stuff, basically working on a team or whatnot, this may help them to determine where these curly brackets are, especially if you are not indenting each one. So if we take out these indents, oops, like this right here, to where they are all lined up, which should not be a thing. You should not line up this all right here, because that makes it very difficult to read at that point in time, because you're lining everything up and you can't hardly determine. So having them tabbed out to where it's a lot easier to read. You know that this is a nested one because it's tabbed inside farther. So last part of this note, nested if statements often used together with else and else if for more complex decisions. Nested if is often used together with else. Okay, so it's basically stating that if there's an if, there's normally an else to go with it. And yes, that's normally the case. But again, I have seen if statements to where they're not even using curly brackets. That's kind of far down the road, so I wouldn't worry about that right now. So, moving on. C++ logic operators and conditions. Local or logic operators in conditions. You can combine or reverse conditions using logic operators. These work together with if, else, and else if to build more complex decisions. Logic operators. These are not logic operators. None of these are. Anywhere else you see an operator and stuff, none of these are logic operators. Logic operators is referring to and, or, and not. Let me write this down here. So the and operator, that's the and operator. The or operator. And the not operator. Those are the operators this is referring to. The AND operator, all conditions must be true. We've gone over this in other videos before. If you go back to a video and stuff that I have dealing with operators, it's probably not actually pinpointed. I'll probably do more videos and stuff and separate them, especially when I get to later versions and stuff, when we start to deal with learning CPP.com. Because this right here goes through a lot of things individually. So I'll probably break up the videos a little better there. This right here, we're just discovering things. So, and the AND operator or logic operator AND, all conditions must be true. The logic operator or at least one condition must be true. The logic operator not reverses a condition, so then true becomes false and false becomes true. That's very confusing, I know. Let's start with the AND. Use AND when both conditions must be true. Here's an example, and it's got a little thing right here. Test if A is greater than B and if C is greater than A. That can be confusing right there too. So we're going to go ahead and do this little example right here. Let's go ahead and get rid of all this code. We're going to go ahead and keep the logic operators in play down there at the bottom with the notes. So the first one here is int A is 200. Int B is 33. Int C is 500. Now we're going to use the if condition again. This is where it gets a little bit confusing because you really have to pay attention to what's what, especially since we're using variables. If, and here's the condition, or the example for this condition, A is greater than B, and C is greater than A. So that's a lot to check right there, especially if you keep going with that. So we're just checking two sides. The output for this is going to be, and we're not going to use else in this case right here. It doesn't have an example, and that's a good thing because this is confusing enough just having that right there. Both conditions are true. And then we're going to end that, but the reason I have my lines there is because I don't have this again. Here we go. And then save it. So, for this example, we already know that both sides are going to be true because it doesn't have even an else statement. It's just trying to clear this up. So we are checking. First off, we have this right here. And as before and stuff, in the notes up here, I'll go ahead and print this out right here with this. All conditions, just to remember, must be true. That means that everything on both sides of this, in order for this to print, has to be true on both sides. So everything to the left and everything to the right has to be true in order for this to print. So where A is 200, sorry, though it's getting a little messy. Where A is 200 and B is 33, obviously A is greater. So this first condition is true. So if we were to put up a little note right here, tab, that right there, try to get this lined up with it. This one is true. Now, the second part of this condition is for this to work. So both these have to be true. C, which is 500, is greater than A, which is only 200. So that makes this one also true. Let's try to get this lined up. True. Okay. So, and here is the operator for this. And keep that lined up. So, first condition is true, and the second condition is true. Therefore, move to the next line. I think I did this for myself and stuff just to make this easier to understand. Since both conditions are true, we can move to the next line. Because the entire thing is true. Like we said before and stuff in another video I did, with the AND operator, and this was a lot to put out, but the AND operator, or and the word can be used too. We can substitute these two right here for the word and the word and still works. It is both the same kind of code. The two and symbols and the word and both. But here's the key. Capital and lowercase and are not the same. In this case and stuff, yes, I believe you have to use a lowercase and, but we can check that later. So, in order to go to the next line, and no, we're not going to do it that way. So, true, yeah, we'll just keep it capitalized. True and true move to, actually, I think it'd be better off put these in parentheses, yeah. True and true to move to the next line. Now, if anything else, false, false, and true, skip next line. True and false, still skip next line. The reason that is because this entire statement right here, entire statement actually equals false. So skip the next line. Actually, here, let's put this right here. Same thing with this one right here. Equals false, and I'm going to put that in caps. False. So skip next line. Do this one the same way. False. This one right here, though, true. Move to the next line. And the last one being, false and false equals false. Skip next line. So, for the AND operator, again, this is just for the AND operator. This is not for the rest of them. You have to have true and true to go to move to the next line. If 1 is false, 2 is true, you got to skip the next line. If the first one's true, the second one's false, you still got a false result. So you got to skip the next line. If both are false, obviously you got false, you got to skip the next line. It does not work the same way for the AND or the OR. This is all for the AND operator. Okay, so we've already saved all, well, go ahead and save this again, run the code, and we should have this printed out. Yes, both conditions are true. Now we wanted to change this to the and check if and in any way capitalized at lowercase still works. I think it's only the lowercase, but I'm not sure, but we'll find out. Go run that, save that, and run that again, and yes. So what if it's all uppercase? No. We obviously get an error right there. We'll go ahead and save it and run it anyways, but yes, most likely undefined. Yep. Expected, actually it expected something else. So capital and, yeah, lowercase and works or the symbols work, but this right here, it must mean something else, obviously. So lowercase and is the same thing as this. So let's make that adjustment down here in our notes that it's not a capital. Even though it has it as capital right here in the notes, it's not capital. It's lowercase. We're going to change this too because it might be a confusion. Most likely it's going to be the same thing for the or and the not. The lowercase set works, yes, but the uppercase set doesn't. Now I was kind of curious about that. I didn't think it would, but I don't know. I can't actually determine something without seeing it for myself, so. So that's how the AND works. This side right here and this side right here, all in parentheses, has to work. So in this condition, this is the condition right here. We evaluate what's inside this first. We check this right here, and this does move simply left to right because the order of operation for this, all these have the same priority, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, let's see, we can come to here, go to here, and check it right here. And there are 3 different ones. Where are they at? Okay, so the greater than and less than have a level 9 priority, where the and has a level 11 priority. So actually that means that this is going to be evaluated first. This is going to be evaluated first in this sequence. This is going to be evaluated second, and then this is going to determine it. So it's going to be the greater than first, the greater than second, and then the and to evaluate the final decision. So is this true? And I've heard, and I think I've seen or something like that and stuff to where if the first one is false, it's not even going to check the second one. When the compiler goes through and he evaluates this one, if this one is false and it sees this in there, it won't even check the second one. But it's kind of like underneath the layers sort of thing. So, and I can't remember precisely if that works that way or not, but according to the order of operations, the greater than sign should come first, and then the and should come second. So it actually should evaluate the greater than, and then determine that there's an and in there, and then evaluate the two of them together. But it doesn't matter. We're not to that point. So again, though, the greater than has a level, looks like level 9, where the and has a level 11. 1 being the greatest, 17 being the lowest. Actually, it says bitwise and. So where's the other and at? No, I think they may have that. Because there's the or. Ah, that's only got a single one. Sorry, the logic and is actually a level 14. My bad. I'm looking at that wrong. The logic and is a level 14. The logic or is a level 15. I don't see the logic not in here anywhere. So the greater than and less than have a level 9. The logic 14 has a level. So the logic and has a level 14. It's sitting right here. Here, I'm going to go ahead and increase this so you can kind of see it better. Scrolling down, there is our greater than equal to signs, which right there, which has a level 9. There's the and, which is level 14. There's the or, which is level 15. So if you have and or in there, then obviously the and is going to be evaluated first, and the or is going to be evaluated second. There's a level right there. And again, this is in CPP reference. You can see that on the screen, I think. But so there's that. Moving on. Now we're going to deal with or. Use or when at least one of the conditions can be true. It looks like we're going to use the same example here. The only thing different we're going to change is, for one, again, this right here. We're going to go and get rid of this comment because this comment's no longer going to apply here. You're going to get rid of this right here and change it to the or symbol, which is going to be that. And then we're going to change the statement here, because the statement is going to be false too, to at least one condition is true, which, for this to be actually evaluated properly and stuff, I imagine and stuff they probably changed. And yes, no. Yes, they changed the order of the variables. It's still A, B, but then they changed the order of C and A to A and C. So C is actually A, and A is actually C. So now the second one is going to be false because A, 200 is not greater than 500. So the second evaluation is false. And again, underneath the layers, if this was to check and find that the OR is in there, then after it evaluates this and find the first one true and sees the OR, it wouldn't even check the second one because it doesn't matter what the next condition is. It might look for other conditions, but it wouldn't check the second one because it doesn't matter if it's true or false. Since the first one's true, it's going to run the next line with the or in there. But that's a little confusing. So in this sense, save that right there. We'll run that, and that'll run because at least one of the conditions is true. Now, for the same thing down here, we are going to go ahead and change this right here to this, and this is kind of how it looks for this. Change this to or. We're going to go ahead and get rid of, yeah, I'm going to have to get rid of all this. Delete, 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 and delete. Change this to or. We're not going to use the capital letters for this. Or. We can go ahead and keep the true and false statements in there because those won't change. Or. Okay. So for this one right here, One or the other has to be true, so it doesn't matter since they're both true and stuff. This is going to be true. That's going to lead to move to the next line. Next one down. Again, as long as one of them is true, it's going to move to the next one. So since one of them is true, the first one's false, but the second one's true, it's going to be true. And we are going to move to the next line. Coming down to the next one. First one's true, the second one's false, but one of them is true, so it doesn't matter what the second one is. So again, it's going to be true. It's how this statement's going to read. Move to the next line. And then the bottom one right here, since both of them are false this time, this is the only situation where it's not going to move with the or. This one will end up being false. This is the only situation in this case where it's going to skip the next line. So with or, with and, you only get one option and stuff for this to actually move to the next line. With and. With or, you got 3 options to move to the next line. You only got one option to skip the next line. So, and if you have more values in there and stuff, then you're going to have to deal with multiple options. With or, only one of the 5 options has to be true if it's all or. Now, you're really throwing things into a chaotic and confusing situation when you're mixing and or together. This statement or that statement and this statement or that statement and, yeah, you're going to start getting yourself really confused right then and there, because then you're going to have to remember the order of how or and work. And since and has a higher order, it's always going to be, the and is going to be evaluated first. You're also going to have to deal with more parentheses in that case. So that's where your code is probably going to get really confusing, and you're probably likely to have undefined behavior unless you get that set up just right. In this situation, we're only dealing with 2. So, moving on. Now we're going to deal with the not situation. And this one right here by itself is confusing. The not operator reverses condition. So if condition is true, the not operator actually makes it false. If the condition is false, the not operator actually makes it true. And this is useful when you want to check that something is not the case. Test if not greater than B. We don't have a real life example for this one yet, so this one's going to be kind of hard to understand how you would use this one. But simply put, even with the or in here, if you put this right here, the not in there, that means that this becomes the opposite. Not what's inside of here. This is still going to be true, this is still going to be true, but the result of that and stuff is going to be the opposite. So since this is true, with that not right there, it's going to be flipped to false. Same thing with the rest of these. If you put that not in front, same thing. That's not going to be true anymore, that's going to be false. Same thing with this one. That's going to be false. In fact, let's see here. Delete, 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 delete. True becomes false. Becomes false. I will actually adjust this right here to where we are dealing with not or. And adjust the symbol right here to where it's this one right here. So that way you understand that we are not actually dealing with or anymore. We were dealing with that becomes false, becomes true. So, with the not actually makes it so that you end up, instead of with 3 false outcomes for or, you end up with 3 true outcomes for OR, you end up with 3 false and 1 true. And if you use an AND, you end up with vice versa. 1 true, or 3 trues and 1 false. See how that can be confusing right there using the not, but I mean, it has its places to use it. In this case, we're going to go ahead and get rid of, for the example, get rid of this one right here, and get rid of one of these conditions right here with the OR. Shrink it down a little bit. We need a second set of parentheses though, because we got to evaluate inner and outer expressions. We're going to go ahead and put the not right there, and then a second set of parentheses. Oops. There we go. And then we're going to change this to statement 2. A is not greater than B, and then we're going to fix the expression here. Actually, expression is actually the only thing that was right with that. You're going to save it. So with the not, since we have parentheses inside of parentheses, the inner parentheses goes first. Is this true or false? 200 greater than 33. A being 200, B being 33. And that makes that true. 200 is greater than 33. We have that set right. Yep. Okay. So that actually becomes true, but we're flipping the sign, so it's actually false. So whatever this is becomes false, and this shouldn't actually print in this case. That's what I was kind of hesitant on. Yeah, it doesn't. Ah, there's the other thing. So in the example, they actually switch this to where this is B and this is A in this example, and then save. So B becomes 200, A becomes 33, where this is false now. This is actually false, but with the not, it becomes true because it flips a sign, and then this will be printed. Again, very confusing. Why do you not like that? Clear, run. Yeah, it was just because of where my cursor was for some reason. It didn't like where my cursor was. So, yes, it's going to be printed and stuff because, yes, it evaluates the inside first, which is false, but we're flipping it with the not sign. It's not false. It's true. Like I said, very confusing. Now for the real life example. In real programs, logic operators are often used to access control. For example, to get access to a system, there are specific requirements. You must be logged in and then either need to be administrator access or have high security clearance, level 1 or level 2. So this is where we're dealing with, I guess, building security maybe, or system security, or whatever. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all this right here for now. If you need all that and stuff to review all this and stuff, you know where it is. You've seen what I'm going through right here. So we're going to also go ahead and get rid of all this code because none of this code is going to pertain to this example anymore. And we're going to write out this example. So bool is logged in equals true. Bool is admin is false. Integer security level is 3, and then it's got a comment 1 is the highest. Skip 2 lines now for the if statement. If condition is logged in and then we got a secondary condition inside the first condition. We got two conditions. So we're adding another condition is admin or security level. And less than or equal to 2. So a lot going on right there with that. If that entire statement right there is true, we're going to output access granted, period, in the statement. Else, we will output access denied. Okay. Now we got some comments down here below, which I'm going to actually put these comments down here. So, try changing just for fun and just to do a bunch of different things to test the conditions and stuff, because you got multiple conditions. You got one condition inside of another condition. Try changing security level and is admin to test different outcomes. Security, okay, so I'm going to write this once and then copy it 3 times pretty much, or 4 times pretty much. Security level 1 is access granted, and then we're going to copy that right there. Enter, paste, paste, paste. Then we're going to change this right here to 2, go down, change it 3, change it 4. First 2 are going to stay the same. We're going to change actually just this back part here to denied. And then add one more. If is admin true, access is granted. Now we can run all these different scenarios, or you can run them yourself. It doesn't matter to me. But this is where it kind of gets confusing, because first off, the thing is we have parentheses inside of parentheses, and if you're following the order of operation for operators, this right here needs to be evaluated first. What's inside these parentheses right here. So admin is set to false. Security level is 3. Here's the question. Does OR go first, or does the compound operator go first? In this case, it's the compound operator that goes first, because it has higher clearance. As we check the comparison operators, we can go back here again and look at it again. The comparison operators have a level 9, where the OR has a level 15, so since the level 9 goes first. So this is going to be evaluated first. Since this is level 3, it is not less than or equal to 2. It is actually greater than. So this one's going to be false. But we have admin here, which is also false. So both these are false, so this entire expression right here is false. And then we can evaluate the outer part of this right here. But since this one we already know is false, with the AND, we know that we need 2 trues in order for the next line of code to be run. But we already know 1 is false, so we know that this is not going to be run. We don't even need to check this one. So we're going to skip the next line and go to this one right here. So this is going to print access denied. Just to double check, save, run, access denied. Okay, now it says you can change things around here if you want to, and yes, you can. You can change this around however you want, or you can ask the questions, have someone input whether they're administrator, put 1 in for administrator. What I mean, there's a lot of options in there for this. You know how to do inputs by now. You can practice with this, rerun this code, write this code over and over different ways, multiple different ways. In fact, it gives you multiple examples. Change the security level to 1. So change the 3 to 1 and see what the outcome is. Change it to 2. Change the security level to 2. We've already got the 3 in there. We know that's denied. We got in 4, anything greater than obviously 2 is going to be denied. So these two are right here, and it even tells you if it's level 1 or level 2, you're going to get access granted because that's going to make this true, even though this is false. So this is going to become a true statement, and as long as logged in, which is already set to true, you're going to have true, true. You're going to get the next line of code. Now, if you change the admin to true and keep everything else the same, then yes, you're going to get a true statement here no matter what this is, because this is going to be true. Now, as long as this matches, you're going to get to the next line of code. So yeah, you can do all kinds of things right here to make changes and stuff, but you just got to remember the order of operation. What's in parentheses first on the inside. So this entire thing's in parentheses. It's a condition, but we got another set of parentheses on the inside of uh, an evaluation. And since the uh, comparison operator has higher clearance than the OR, so we got to evaluate this side first to check and see if this is true or false, and then we go to checking both sides. So that's pretty much the end of that right there. That's a good example. I do remember getting very much confused on this because of all the trying to remember this. I did not have this at the time I was going through this the first time around, so this was quite confusing. I did change these values around quite a few times the first time just to see what would come up. I was trying to evaluate this myself in my head. This time it's a lot easier because I understand it, but yeah, that's pretty much the end of that right there. So feel free to play around with that. Try out different things. I'm going to move on though. In fact, I think I'm going to go and end this video with that because that was quite a long section right there. The next part and stuff that we're going to be doing is real life examples using if and else. So we're going to have quite a bit more examples using, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 examples in the next video using if, else, else if, probably a bunch of evaluations in there too. So yeah, feel free to play around with this, try out these real life examples on your own or whatnot. If again, like normal and stuff, since I'm not really educating, I'm just showing you my journey and stuff. If I've said something wrong, as far as not being correct about how this works, feel free to correct me in the comments. If you got a question, ask it. If you just have a comment or want to state something, feel free to ask it as well. I'm going to end the video right there. The next video is going to pick up right here. So thank you for watching and have a good day.